going to hand it over to you to introduce. Hello, and welcome to Netradyne's podcast, Welcome to the Green Zone with Kahn and Adam Lang. Today we're going to be talking about how video technology protects your fleet during litigation with our special guest, J.W. Taylor. Adam Kahn, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourselves and get this conversation started.
Yeah, good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Zone podcast. This is a very exciting day for us. Myself, Adam Kahn, and Adam Lang. We both collaborated on this, and we thought it'd be just a great venue to share our backgrounds and our experiences in the transportation space, and then along the way invite some of our friends to chat about what's happening in the space. My title here at Netradyne, I'm Chief Business Development Officer, and I'm the other Adam. Adam Lang is Director of Customer Advisory Services at Netradyne. Hey, let's maybe we can kick this off, Adam Lang. I like this format, and I always kind of lean on you for what's happening in the space. You definitely have your ear on the ground and your eyes wide open. Anything interesting that you've come across, the last couple of weeks, that you want to kind of dig into?
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff going on in trucking right now, but as a recovering safety director and trucking professional of over 10 years in the space, we hear about nuclear lawsuits. We hear about these large verdicts that have just skyrocketed and continue to spiral out of control for this oh so valuable and essential segment of our economy. It's very interesting. I read a story in Fleet Owner about nuclear verdicts continuing to be on the rise. And what's really interesting is that the average size of verdicts over $1 million against trucking firms have increased by 867% between 2010 and 2018. And at the same time, roughly between 2000 and 2020, the rate of fatal crashes involving a truck decreased from 2.23 to 1.47 per 100 million miles traveled per large truck. So although it seems like we're becoming safer in the industry and there are less fatalities per 100 million miles, that's an important metric to give comparison to it. Verdicts just continue to spiral out of control and go up. And that is a real problem for large companies, for mid-sized companies, and for the small companies, the entrepreneurs out there that are under attack by some of the attorneys out there.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I have a heavy discipline of reading articles, and we're blessed in this industry with some really excellent editors who capture the pulse of the industry. But I'm also more of a bottoms up type of person where I read an article and the next thing I think about is what evidence can I advise or think about where these big topics are actually being demonstrated and you can see it's working. There was a interesting opportunity that I had to visit one of our customers in Kentucky, and they were really, really happy about their safety program, and they're doing a lot of work, not only in working with their drivers, but doing the hard work behind the scenes. And the evidence that they provided us of how they knew it was working is as the drivers ended their shifts, the drivers would come into the break room and they would actually compare their safety scores, almost like a game. And, it's almost like, Adam, like you and I are in fantasy football, and I could have the worst record in the league, but if I beat you this week, I have bragging rights, right?
Well, you may not beat me, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, I know it. This year I'm struggling a little bit. But, the interesting piece was that, the drivers, it was at the driver's level where they were invested and engaged. And it's, and that kind of drew me to a conversation, and I'm going to introduce our guest, J.W. Taylor, And one of the conversations that I had with JW and his team, which is a wonderful team, and they continue to grow in the industry. And I had the opportunity to attend a legal forum event here, CoStar headquarters, where he was a guest speaker. But one of the pieces that I was really, my takeaway was kind of the actions about bridging the gap, right? So, doing the right work versus the article, and how do you connect that? And maybe we can I like this segment of our show here, which is let's 5 questions. Let's go after it, and pick JW's brain for 5 questions. But JW, maybe I can lean on you and say what trends are you seeing? What's happening in your space? Maybe introduce your team and the fight that you're fighting, and and the defense that you're defending.
Well, thanks, Adam. And Adam, I get to say that a lot today. For all your viewers, we'll come up with a way. I think we're going to do Adam Lang, Adam Kahn. It flows very nicely. Thank you, first of all, for letting me join you today. And what we're talking about is incredibly important. Look, we're not the first ones to talk about the issues with nuclear verdicts and those types of things, but I think some of the things that we're going to touch on may be helpful in the end. I think Adam Lang kind of summed up what's going on in the industry. Well, we're seeing across all the venues, all the jurisdictions, what was it, million miles, many more miles, but yet claims verdicts are way up. So Adam Lang, 1 + 1 = 3. And that's been the problem. Yeah. And everyone's scratching their head going, wait a minute, we know all of these things. And Adam Kahn, that's what you saw in that presentation. Lots of good information from lots of good attorneys, lots of great safety directors and those things. But are we bridging that gap? Are we getting over that bridge to actual execution in operations? Well, the answer must be, I don't think so. How do we know? Well, because the reptile theory that you hear so much about in nuclear verdicts is still an issue. We're still having, not only, by the way, nuclear verdicts, but something even worse than that. I call them supernova verdicts that just make absolutely no sense. But I think we can touch on some of the reasons why today. So I would say that nuclear verdicts, that being, Adam, as you know, those 10 million or more, that's one thing. There's nuclear settlements that you never get to hear about. That's what really can drive the industry and insurance premium and those types of things. So I guess as an introduction, those are the things that we'll be talking about today. Here at Taylor Nelson, we are a transportation logistics firm. We do trucking, warehousing, brokering every day, all day long. That's who we represent. We have the good fortune of representing those companies and those drivers and the folks every day, all day long that move the nation from here in Florida, beautiful Central Florida, all the way to California. Yeah, even California, and all over the nation. So we get the opportunity to work with all types of different operations. And I will toss the mic back to you to say the things that we're talking about. This I'm convinced of. The trucking companies out there, the brokerages out there, most all, they want to do the right thing. They want to protect the public. And Adam Lang, you've sat around that table as a safety director. By the way, you said you're a recovering safety director. You'll never recover. There is no recovery. There is no pill for that, Adam Lang.
I'm understanding that. Yeah.
And so that's the things that they really want to do it. They want to do it right. But Adam Kahn, why can't we get across that bridge?
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things you just brought up, and I'm glad you brought it up. I'm not sure if I'm glad you brought it up, because anytime you see a settlement or a lawsuit that is in Transport Topics or the other trade journals, that means that they awarded that. The other piece that you brought up, which was the off-the-record settlement. Can you describe, so there's a term that I'm familiar with called plaintiff's bar. And the dangerous piece here is, and I think we were talking about it offline a couple of days ago, is, every time something gets settled or awarded, like that's where the next lawsuit starts. Can you maybe share a little bit on, I call it the layman's version of describing, that the plaintiff's bar and why that's maybe a dangerous, achievement for some plaintiff attorneys.
You mean the dark side? So no, look, plaintiff's bar and there's a defense bar. There's two different sides of it. And there's lots of great, let me say to you, there's lots of great, honest plaintiff's attorneys out there that are doing the right thing to protect the public, protect their clients, and doing the right thing. And then there's lots of bad ones. Yes, we talked about, Adam, I think we're talking about the billboards you see alongside the road and the commercials that you see on TV. They're just awful. And so this is not a lottery system. It's not. But boy, sure looks like it when you look at these commercials, but it's not. That's not what it's intended to be. The court system demands more respect than that. But I think part of what you were talking about there, if I hear you correctly, is that when the plaintiff's bar gets together, they talk, they share information. They share how, not necessarily confidential information, I'm not saying that, we'll assume that they don't do that, but in regards to how to try cases. Look, the reptile theory came from a couple of plaintiff's attorneys who wrote a book about how to engage the reptilian brain. In other words, make the jurors think, I'm scared. This is bad. I must protect. It has maybe nothing to do with what actually happened in the case, but spinning it that way. And I think the other part of it is that maybe the defense bar could do a better job of communicating amongst each other. And I think we're seeing more of that to the degree that it can be done. But yeah, it's a situation.
So interesting. And I know, Adam Lang, you have quite a bit of battle scars in trying to get in front of it, because I know you and I talked about the role of the safety manager. You're running with your ears back, 1,000 miles per hour, and taking the time to stop, think, and prepare. Maybe JW, maybe start here on suggesting things that fleets might prepare, and Adam, maybe chip in and share best practices that you've seen, rolling up your sleeves and being in the trenches.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you want me to go first, Adam Lang?
Yeah, please do, JW. I'll build off of you.
Yeah. So look, I spent a great deal of time structuring and restructuring companies. And the things that we learn over here in these cases, the things that we learn in these presentations, like even today, that's great information. But executing on that, the bridge that we talk about, right? Executing that over in operations is a whole nother thing. And it's not easy. But by the way, if it were easy, everyone would do it, right? But you know what? The public demands it of us. And again, my clients want to do it. And so how do we do that? Oftentimes, in my role as general counsel to these companies, I'm sitting there right there every day, all day long, like I say, with skin on. I have skin on right there as their counsel. And that's part of what we're doing here at this firm as industry insiders. We sat around that executive board table, my attorneys have. They've been general counsels inside these trucking groups in different operations. So we know the entropy and the things that need to get done. But we're amazed over and over and over again throughout the country when we look at these cases as to what the trigger was. I think, and if you want to, we can talk about some cases just in general about some triggers and these nuclear and these cases that you just can't wrap your head around what went on. But this is what I'll say. This is my point. And I think Adam Lang will come to this as well, is that one of the reasons our clients have been so successful in dealing with claims is because we have the right people in the right seats and the bus pointed in the right direction. And well before, hear me on this, way before there's any claim, we are doing the things that we need to be doing so that we can address those claims. Maybe it's a claim we need to resolve. We'll resolve it. Maybe it's a claim we need to defend. We'll defend it. But we have the things in place. We don't have issues that blow up in front of us like employee handbooks, driver manuals, things like that. Oh, yeah, it's just that detail, right down to it. And I can give you case after case where those have been issues when they never should have been. But nobody, Adam Lang, I think Adam Kahn said, we're so busy that we can't do the things that protect us. And man, Adam Kahn, I think that's true. We need to stop. Let's build a bridge from knowledge to execution. Then you see a change in safety culture. Then you see defenses to these cases because we're doing the things we need to do.
JW, you said a lot right there, and it kind of resonated with me because at my former company, we were very much into 4DX, 4 disciplines of execution. And it's a timeless method of goal setting and getting everyone in the same path and executing on those strategies. And that is one of the most difficult things to do in any industry, is execution of a thing. Coming up with the ideas, strategizing about it, asking the question, asking the right question, those are all things that can be done in a half-hour green light session. It's building it and executing upon it, and then following up and inspecting what you expect. So many of these carriers, if we're talking about, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 truck fleets and above, they're very sophisticated, and they have individuals within them that have operated in systems that have always done it this way. And what you find in some of the smaller or more homegrown trucking companies is they had exponential growth. They might have had some acquisitions. They've got a leader with a real entrepreneurial spirit, but they didn't bring along the need for execution in other areas such as safety. Now, that doesn't mean they don't care about it, not one bit. In fact, you talk to any of these trucking executives, trucking company owners, and top of mind is safety. They want to see their drivers get back at the end of their shift or the end of their week-long, 2-week-long trip, just like they want everyone on the roadway to go home at night. There is no ill will there. There is no, hey, let's skimp on safety so we can put a few extra bucks in our pocket. That's not the mindset nor the intention. The problem then becomes you have a structure in place that kind of runs and guns a lot and deals with putting out little fires here and there, fires for the customer, for the drivers, the day-to-day stuff. And I heard someone just this morning use this phrase, schedule work time. And what that means is that when you have work time scheduled, that is your individual time to develop those strategies, to develop the workflow that's going to help you. Have regular reviews with your employee handbook or your operator's manuals. Look at them quarterly or annually and make sure that you include your legal counsel in those reviews. That way you can add new things, make old things simpler and more distilled so it's not so detailed that you're creating an unreasonable standard for safety, which many of these folks are going to be looking for, a standard that cannot be met by anyone. And if you can do those things as a team with top-down management that is on board, there's nothing you can't accomplish when it comes to buttressing up your defenses against the reptile.
Yeah, Adam Lang, I think that's, as a key takeaway, I mean, that's definitely, if you're listening and you have your notepad right next to you, write that down because that's a nice key takeaway. Another way that I've characterized that is kind of to understand what the new ask is, right? So, like Adam Lang and myself, although we look like we just got out of college, we have been in the industry for multiple decades, focused on safety. And I would tell you that the understanding of an accident and what happens next 15 years ago 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago continues to change. And, so if you have a program that, you've done the work 5 years ago, continue to ask that question. I mean, what's changed? What are the new attacks on us? And are we prepared? Right. So, a lot of times you're starting to see where, technology and data equally help the fleets defend their profiles. And one example might be, which is an emerging trend, is something that I'll call discretionary effort, or the ability to portray. And I think, Adam, you just made mention of it, is the good intent of your program, and how do you demonstrate that you're actually executing on what you set out to do.
Tell your story.
Yeah, right. JW, I was, and I know you and I chatted about this when you were at the last industry conference, and I continue to start thinking about how we infuse, positive information about the driver, because I'm aware, and you're probably very aware, that there is a bias against big trucks and juries. There's never been a movie. If you think about all the movies, and somebody said this the other day, and they gave me one example, and I told them to log off the webinar, but there's never been a movie where the truck driver or the truck is the hero, right? There's not a Disney movie about, Sammy the semi-truck coming in to save it. It's always the villain. So people are biased a little bit already to say, hey, I'm in a jury box. I'm hearing about a trucking company. So I'm very curious, JW, on your experience on how, positive data about the fleet portraying, their investment and their resources, the individual metrics around a driver, is that a growing, asset for defending trucking companies?
Well, yeah, I think you look at it two ways. The primary way is we're not just trying to put lipstick on to look pretty. We're doing this because it matters. What we do matters. How we do it matters. You matter. And so absolutely gathering correct, honest, transparent information about a trucking company and being able to articulate that to plaintiff's counsel, to the jury, or to the judge is incredibly important. Gosh, Adam Kahn, if we could just get to that, that'd be awesome. We're too busy fighting all this other stuff. Oh, wait a minute. So you have an employee handbook that says this and you're doing that? Oh, you did that. I know why you did it, because you wanted more money.
Yeah.
No. And so those are things we're dealing with. How can we look good when we don't have those things in place? So you can load me up with data and have bad policies. That doesn't work. You can have bad data with good policies. That doesn't work. So it's a combination of doing all the right things at the right time. Not easy, is it, Adam Lang? No. Easier said than done. But, Adam Kahn, to your point, is it important? Oh, I believe that it is. Because we know that it's over 80% of all crashes involving semi-trucks, semi-trailers, is caused by the four-wheeler, by the non-commercial vehicle, not us. We also know that 90+% of all cargo moved in the nation is moved by trucking companies with less than 10 power units. So, Adam Lang, they're not all sophisticated. Most are not. It's a very fragmented industry. So, any information to get the story out there about we are the good guys, because we are. And listen, run the bad guys out of business. I'm all for that. Get them off the roads. You and I are. We're on those roads too. We're consumers. And so information can help. Has it been something that's really rang the bell, Adam Kahn? In these, I deal with a lot with the negotiations and settlement conferences and things like that. But I'm general counsel in these trials. I watch a lot of those as well. And you say, well, what went wrong? Well, I'm looking at a list that I had gathered of cases, and most of them were, as you already know, the states where they're going to be, right? California, Texas, and Florida, also known as litigation hellholes. And so a couple of things, you look at these, and let me make some points on these. And I think it goes to Adam Lang's execution side of things, helping us bridge the gap. What really happened in these cases? Now, you see the commentary on it, you see it blown up. I'm looking at one, 80 million, 52 million. I remember when the 411 million one came down, that was in Florida. Then you had 101, that was in Texas. All of these going along until you had the actual $1 billion case here in Florida. Yeah. And that, you might remember, is the Zion case. I think it's the correct pronunciation of the plaintiff that was deceased. Terrible, terrible, terrible. But do you know that of some of those cases I just mentioned, including that one, there was no defense. There was no defense attorney. Now, Adam Lang, I could even try that case. And so, the thing about it is, how did that happen? How did these other things happen in these cases that blew it up? Those are things we're talking about today. They didn't have general counsel. They didn't have the right people. For instance, you guys, with what you do and educating, what you're trying to do today, which I highly respect, is educating the public. That's the key. That's really the key when the day is done, about what really happened. But they hang a $1 million verdict. You think that'll ever be collected? But it looks nice on plaintiff's wall. In the insurance companies, and we all know the flight out of Florida with insurance companies for more than one reason. But all that does, when the day is done, it just increases the cost of cabbage. And guess who pays for cabbage? As consumers. And it makes no sense. Now, I'll leave that kind of comment about these supernova cases and say that there are things that can be done. Adam Lang, we're talking about, and we'll continue talking about execution. Let me hit a couple of them, Adam. Got to be properly structured. Got to have the right contracts in place. Got to have the right insurance in place. Got to have the right people on the team. Got to have the right team players. I'm just one of the team players. You're a team player. We all help these companies. Got to get the right people on the team and get all of those flowing in the right direction. Then you start bridging the gap as to, look at all this knowledge out here. Hey, look at all this data out here. I don't know anything about that. That means nothing to me over here. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Let's bridge that gap. Hey, here, Adam Kahn, is the information we gathered on your driver. This is a good actor driver. Let's celebrate that. Well, let's celebrate that in the public. For instance, the Florida Trucking Association, great association. We do that. And ATA does that. TCA does that. We reward these drivers. And look, the associations across the nation, and I'd say to your listeners and your viewers that if you're in the trucking or in the logistics business, join your local trucking associations. They're in your state. Support them. Support them. Look what FTA did, Florida Trucking did. House Bill 837. We got curbing lawsuit abuse, tort reform. We got her done. It's a big deal. And it levels the playing field so that we can address some of these things that we're talking about today.
Yeah, and I think that anyone who's listening to the podcast here, you don't have to think about drinking the ocean, right? You can take a sip at a time. And I'll give an example. We're working with a fleet in southern Florida right now, and one of the achievements that we saw last week, they had about 70 drivers hit a recognition element within the driver-eye system. So what we do is we look at drivers who have consecutive stops at a stop sign. So you think about, well, everyone should stop at a stop sign, but I mean, that's not a rolling stop. And if you ever want to see how the patience of the other people on the road are, or your family, try doing that about 5 or 6 stop signs in a row until your significant other punches you in the arm and yells at you to go. But in this particular fleet, like I worked hard with the unit in my car, and no one wants to ride in the car with me anymore. But this particular fleet had 75 drivers last week that hit this mark. And, so I think it's an interesting aspect that you don't have to, swallow the whole ocean to say, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. You can go step by step by step, say, hey, here's an instance. I'm going to put some shine on the drivers, encourage them. Now they're engaged. Now, Adam Lang, when you sit down and you start to formulate the program, you're actually including the drivers into that conversation versus pushing your program on them. And the moment you can do that, now it becomes, to JW, to your point, now the drivers, I'm going to give the thumbs up. Now the drivers are, part of that team. Everyone else is here, but now you got the drivers as the thumbs up on that team. You like what I did there, Adam, the thumbs up?
I love it. And anytime you can give positive recognition in a meaningful way. So with, plugging our system once more again, I will, because I've used it for many years. And it's so nice to be able to tell someone that they did a good job and then give them an example of what that means, to show it in stark relief against something that maybe would have been a mistake or something they could get some feedback on, and differentiating that so your fleet knows they're a part of this. Any type of recognition program that a trucking company can do, or a company in general, that revolves around safe action, safe activity, is so important, because that in itself becomes the secret sauce to your safety culture. And you can't just fabricate this. This takes time, this takes effort, it takes buy-in, including your drivers in those types of decisions, being transparent with them, and then showing them, how are you going to reward them? Is it like a jacket program where they have, an annual safety jacket? And I tell you what, during depositions and when you're gathering material and you look at previous safety photos, you show a driver with chevrons going up and down their arms with safe years of operation. You have bonus structures in place that primarily focus on safety as the driving force, and anything else is kind of secondary leading into it. You're really going to create that culture that you want, which ultimately ends up being more profitable when you have a safer fleet, when you have an involved fleet. And again, that plug for industry associations, ATRI just released a couple of months ago, I can't recall exactly what it was, but it was a study on how trucking companies that are involved with industry associations tend to have less frequent and less severe accidents. And it's because of the information sharing and the idea that there are no secrets in safety, but you have to execute on it.
That's a great point. I like the fact that I always feel like envy is a better motivator than fear.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, Adam Lang, about everything you're saying, every day get up and make up your bed, right? But I wonder who didn't make up their bed this morning. Don't raise your hand. And so, but here's what's interesting to me. When I talk to these operations, these motor carriers, these brokerages, these logistics companies across the nation, everything you say, they know. We know this. Oh, wait a minute, we do this. Do they? Some do. Some do. But many, Adam Lang, do not, but yet they know it. Why is that? Execution. I'm so busy, I don't have time for that. Or I thought we were doing it. I thought we were doing that. These are the things I hear. And so let me give you an example that just, you do all the things correctly, right? Mm-hmm. Get in front of the jury. And you find out that motor carrier's driver actually filled out an application for the driving job with the mothership, with the holding company that is not the motor carrier. It's a separate company, the big company. Wait a minute. Why do we have drivers over at Schnitzer Southeast, that was the motor carrier, filling out applications with Schnitzer Steel? which is a separate company. Guess what happened? They pierced the veil over to what we call the mothership, the big company, because listen to me, their applications were not correct. You said that's not possible. You can look the case up yourself. Monterey versus Schnitzer Southeast LLC et al., meaning all these others that they named, and one of them was that. So the execution, Adam, knowledge, you just gave us some really good points and really good knowledge and things that we ought to be doing. Execution, we know it, but we're not doing it. What does that sound like? That sounds like the reptile theory, doesn't it?
Yep.
And so how do you cure that? So you get the right people on the right team, get the right technology in place, you get the right policies and procedures, and you audit and you stay on top of those things.
So just from a matter of a time perspective, I think we got room for one more question, and I want to leave some time for this because I know that there's some meat on this bone, and very much like we're all getting on the podcast here talking about best practices. You fully recognize that the plaintiff attorneys also have trade shows and they also have conferences, symposium to share ideas.
They go to really nice places.
Well, I don't know. I mean, come on. I mean, going to a trucking conference, that sounds awesome. I mean, come on. But I'm aware of things like where you're starting to hear about driver consent and biometrics and, terms like failure to equip and, what type of, I'll call it advice, would you have for a fleet as a final takeaway to, to listen to look for, to think about, to prepare for, as the environment continues to change?
I'm often asked questions, and I remember I could say 10, 15 years ago, hey, these cameras, no way, that's going to cause all kinds of problems. It's going to be used against us. J.W. Taylor, what's your opinion? I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought more than 80% was their fault. I'd like to see that. And by the way, if it's our fault, what should we do? We should do the right thing. We should resolve that case. Well, now fast forward to where we are today. There's not much debate on forward-facing event recorders as to their value and those types of things. So technology can serve a very important purpose, especially when we're doing all the things the right way. And so I would say that if you still think that, forward-facing event recorders don't help resolve cases, that's so 2012. So, we're way past that. So I think some of the new technologies, I think I'm often asked, well, what about driver facing? Well, you said in the actuary report on that, it was hard. It's just like the forward facing. Now everybody's going, this really does help. I can help train drivers. That's a good thing. I can find out this driver has a problem. That's a good thing. Hey, it was our fault. Let's get this thing resolved. That's why we have insurance. That's why we do all the right things. I'm not afraid of any of those things. And new technology, let's embrace those things that work. Let's pay attention to what the impact is. But what I would say is don't be left behind. Don't be left behind, because plaintiff's bar is going to argue, you had all of this and you didn't use it. I know why. Because you're still cheating on your hours of service, aren't you? You still have 2 logbooks, don't you? Well, no, because I can't. Well, yeah, you do. I know you do. Those types of things. So, do your homework. Partner, I'd say to your listeners, partner with people who have the right information, that are educating the public, that want to increase safety. And that would be my advice. And look, there's lots of stuff I'll be speaking next week on autonomous vehicles with folks and what all of that means and how to insure it and all of that. So technology is a great thing. Technology is not the answer to everything. It is a tool, just like ADAS, just like all of these other things. It's a tool, but it doesn't help having those tools, Adam, if you have your drivers driving, signing up with applications with some other company.
Yeah, right.
It's holistic. It's all the way across. It's called, you ready? This is our take-home term. There'll be a quiz. Enterprise risk management.
There's your final thing to write down on your notepad. So I think I'm looking at the clock here, and maybe we can reserve a couple minutes and see if there's any kind of questions that might be on, and maybe we can spend 5, 6, 7 minutes. Courtney, if there's a couple questions that we can, we've been doing all the talking, so maybe we can listen for a moment and then provide some advice to anyone who's got questions.
Yeah, we do have some questions in right now. First question we got is, how can automation tools, what JW was just talking about, help with proactive litigation efforts? Just kind of recapping what you mentioned there.
Yeah, the short story is that these can often help in the negotiations well before litigation. There's where the strength and power of these are. We have companies out there that do reenactments. But look, if I have automation tools that show me what the driver was doing, where the driver's eyes were, or the speed, the braking, the hard braking, all those things, yeah, of course, that helps tell the story. And look, when the day is done, and it's really the ability to have a true, transparent narrative of what really happened and the things that we did that led up to that. So, yeah, and it shows that you care.
I think that goes a long way too, because if you can get away from a big bad trucking company and actually, a team of people, we had one guest on. It was interesting, Adam Lang, if you remember, the term that she used was, all my drivers are humans, and she classified them. Humans like to be, taught and not told, but just the continued reference of human versus driver as a generic term. JW, to your point, it means you care. And if you actually have that come across, now all of a sudden, if you're in a courtroom and the jury's looking at you, you're more likable. And, people like to work with people they like. So.
Yeah. And, there's a lot to what you just said, and having a story to back up why they should like you is really helpful.
Yep. Courtney, do we have another question in queue?
We sure do, thank you. We have just a kind of mini question. How long can a standard lawsuit take?
Too long.
Forever.
In dog years or like human years? I mean, what's the right cadence of time?
Well, let me say it to you this way. It's much better on the bridging that gap, doing the right thing so that you're never in litigation. No one wins in litigation, no one.
No.
And so how long can it take? Oh, these cases with catastrophic claims that I deal with, they can take 4, 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes longer. If you get through a case in 2 years, that's like a rocket docket. And so it takes a long time. And how long it takes, whether it's a year, 2 years, or 7 years, it's the toll it takes on the company. How many miles of cargo must you move to pay those attorney's fees, to pay for your time? It's a lot of cargo you got to move to make up for that. So it takes too long, is the answer.
Can I just throw something out there that settlements, when you're at fault, if you handle them with alacrity and speed and precision, you can get out in front of it, and it can just be a distant memory, a learning lesson. But when you're at fault, move to take care of that adverse party as quickly as you can. Do the right thing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. It's a wonderful answer. I have one last question here, and this is for the Adams mostly. Are there particular features that fleets should be looking for in a dash cam to help with driver safety, both proactively in the long run? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I might start here, Adam, and maybe I'll let you add. there's two features that I really like. One is any ability that can recognize positive driving behavior and get that back to the driver, because I think that creates just a very close-knit engagement of trust and transparency. The second one that I think is very beneficial is where a system might be able to provide an in-cab notification, and under the guide of act now, talk later, let's identify something that you can change immediately that puts you in a better spot, and then later, next week, next month, we can talk about it. But the goal, for features is think about features that can identify risk and where the driver can immediately change, the radius around their vehicle and create a safer environment. So things like driver recognition of good driving habits, and then in-cab of, slow down, create space, put your phone down, remember to stop. All those are frictionless, where the driver can self-coach and respond immediately, which is ideally really what you want. You want to have these environments where problems don't persist and they get changed months later. It's problems that are identified and get changed within seconds, are truly, a much more efficient way to work with your team. Adam, do you have a personal favorite here that maybe I stole your thunder?
Driver recognition platform. That's what we are. And I feel like in this day and age, every time that A-Tree comes out with a new list, driver retention, driver turnover is always on that top 10 list. The way to keep your drivers engaged in a positive manner is so easy when you're looking at a solution like Netradyne. I like to ask the question, what is the accuracy of your alerts? Like, hey, I've got all these great tools at my disposal. How accurate is it? And kind of taking the Pepsi challenge with other platforms is something that I think should be done. Look at it. I also feel like transparency, like Adam Kahn talked about before, transparency with your drivers from start to finish. Don't make it a mystery. If any driver wants to come in and look at the platform, show it to them. Show them what you see. Nobody has time in the day to watch everyone's individual actions. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, one safety person for one driver. There are not enough people to do that. So getting something that can distill it down and is frictionless, does not require a lot of hands-on touch until you get to a level where more coaching is needed. Notice I said coaching, not telling them or beating them over the head. It's coaching. It's showing them the way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Adam. So I do want to thank JW. I hope you had a fun time. We most certainly enjoy having you as our guest as your team uncovers new, battles and victories, and as the industry changes, I would most certainly welcome you to join us for a future podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adams, and I appreciate that. And I give two quick parting pieces of advice. One, all the questions and things we talked about today, if you're a motor carrier logistics company out there wondering, well, man, am I really doing the right things? Check your records retention policy. Check your records retention policy. See what's going on there. I bet you'll find answers to your question, because if you don't have one, or what it's actually talking about. Number two, don't eat the candy corn. Those are my advices as I part today.
You know what? Way to bring it back all the way from the beginning of the conversation. So thank you.
I love it.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks all.